welcome to Same Name, Different Game Gaiden. I'm Joe, and yes, this is the third video I've produced this year about Double Dragon 2. But like I said in the Double Dragon 2 Revisited episode of the main series, this one is quite a bit different from the arcade game with which it partially shares a title. Plus, it's a Game Boy game, which slots it very nicely into the Game Boys of summer. Another reason it wasn't covered earlier. This isn't Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, this is just Double Dragon 2. But unlike all the other versions I've talked about here, it wasn't in Japan. In fact, it wasn't a Double Dragon game at all. But it is connected, so let's dive in. The game we in English-speaking territories know as Double Dragon 2 on the Game Boy was actually released before the Game Boy version of Double Dragon 1 in Japan, and was part of Technos' other famous brawler series, the Kunio series. Also known as the Nekketsu High series, and perhaps almost known as the Renegade series. But all the later Renegade games that did get released weren't made by Technos. More on that later. But yes, this game was known in Japan as Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen, roughly translated, Hot-Blooded Punk Kunio, The Further Brawls. The story in this game is fairly par for the course when it comes to Kunio. Some new pharmaceutical company has moved into town and is rumored to be pretty shady, but that doesn't concern Kunio. Well, at least not until the CEO's little jerk of a son first tries to assault and abduct Miho, a friend of Kunio and Ricky, who later appears in Shodai Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun for the Super Famicom. Said little jerk Yuji is stopped by Kunio's best friend Hiroshi, who in typical Hiroshi fashion, gets his butt kicked by Yuji and his buddies. And that sets Kunio and Ricky off on a mission to avenge their friend. A bit low stakes, isn't it? Just getting revenge for their friend who got beat up for stopping a creeper. But hey, Kunio is a high school kid, and a lot of his adventures are just beating up other high schoolers. Of course, Yuji has a crime syndicate at his disposal, so it's going to be a little tougher than initially thought, but Kunio and Ricky aren't pushovers. And I do keep saying Kunio and Ricky because this game actually does allow 2 players with a link cable, and that's the only advantage it has over the Game Boy version of the first Double Dragon. This game is unique in that it's the only original Kunio brawler for the Game Boy. While there were quite a few Nekketsu High games released on the old gray brick, the vast majority were sports games. From a Japan-only port of Super Dodgeball to the game most of us know as Nintendo World Cup. The only other Nekketsu beat-em-up on the system is Downtown Special, a port of the Famicom game, which is kind of like a period piece sequel to River City Ransom. So, how did this game get to be a Double Dragon title? We'll find out after these messages.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following. Martial Arts Mayhem continues with Double Dragon 2 for Game Boy. 1 or 2 player action lets you help Billy and Jimmy Lee destroy the most devious villain ever encountered from Acclaim.
極悪な敵にライバル2人が手を組んだ。熱血硬派国尾くん番外乱闘編ゲームボーイで登場。Technos.
Double Dragon, the greatest martial arts video game legend ever. Kick it off with the million-seller, Double Dragon 2 for your NES. And now, the incredible Double Dragon 2 Legend comes to Game Boy. The most outrageous portable street fighting action ever. And for world-class martial arts action, it's got to be Double Dragon 3. Total Double Dragon action for NES and Game Boy. From Acclaim, choose your weapon.
The journey from Kunio to Billy Lee isn't quite as straight of a line as you might think. A flyer from the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show, found and preserved by Chris of the site Video Game Ephemera, shows that Technos plan to release this game themselves, not as a companion to River City Ransom, but something else entirely called The Renegades. Would this have taken the Renegade name back for Technos after it had been sort of abused and thrown around by other developers? It's impossible to say, because before that version saw the light of day, it was snapped up by Acclaim, then US publishers of the Double Dragon games, and released as Double Dragon 2. The screenshots here are pretty small, but it looks as if very little was changed. Just the Lee brothers sprite, and the status bar appears as if it was going to be moved to the top of the screen, but the released version keeps it at the bottom, like Bangai Rento Hen. So here we have it. Given the same box art as Double Dragon 3 on the NES, this is Double Dragon 2 for the Game Boy. It's a complete reskin of the Nekketsu game with the exception of the subways and the final stage. The characters are given more realistic proportions, but with that comes less expressive faces. The stages themselves are brought much more in line with Double Dragon games, and the music has been completely redone to have a less whimsical feel, for lack of a better descriptor. And there's good reason for that. The Double Dragon version changes the story completely. Here, Billy and Jimmy go to teach at a new martial arts school. A guy there named Anderson is very jealous of them, so he kills one of their friends, a guy named Wright, one of the vestiges of the Renegades version, and frames them, leaving them with a price on their heads as they try to clear the good name of Lee. But what about the gameplay? Well, it remains untouched, and I'm not sure that's a great thing. I've spent this much time talking about the history because, sadly, the game itself is the least interesting thing here. To be candid, it's dull as dishwater. It's not terrible, it isn't broken in any way, it's just boring. Brawlers are often kept fresh with a variety of techniques, set pieces, weapons, and enemy variety. This game has none of that. At your disposal are punches and kicks. You can grab enemies and then either punch them or throw them, and you can duck before unleashing an uppercut. Well, it's more of a in the Kunio version. Just a jumping uppercut in the Double Dragon version. And finally, you can jump on a downed enemy and crush their ribcage. And that's it. You can't even jump, let alone jump kick. Some enemies have weapons, but they don't drop them. Your combos are either punch until landing a hook, or kick once then do a hopping kick that goes straight up. You can't throw guys into other guys, and the enemy AI is so brick stupid that even against bosses you can easily lure them into a flying uppercut, then do a rib crush, the two most powerful moves in the game, and just rinse and repeat. This strategy even works against the final boss. Speaking of bosses, the only gameplay change comes in the form of one of the bosses. They're all changed in their appearance, of course, with my favorite being this Bosozoku getting turned into Jason Voorhees with a chainsaw, but only one is really, truly changed. Exhibit A. Kunio battles a ridiculous parody of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Exhibit B. Billy Lee fights a ninja, and they both have different moves. The ninja can create duplicates of himself and disappear. The bodybuilder can lift Kunio over his head and throw him. It's a weird change, but it's also the most significant and really only gameplay one. Story-wise, the endings are of course different. While the Kunio game just sees Kunio making rich jerk Yuji apologize to Hiroshi in the hospital, Double Dragon sees the dojo master killed by the guy who tried to frame the Lees, and he then apologizes for not believing them. And that right there will probably help you figure out which version of this game is your preferred one. Honestly, neither is really worth playing unless you're a huge Double Dragon or Kunio fan, but the tone will make the difference. For my part, I love the expressive faces in the Nekketsu version, but the characters also look kinda off-model from the other games in the series, and I enjoyed the settings and music of the Double Dragon entry more. Plus, you know, Jason Voorhees parody. If you do want to check out this game, the Japanese version is available on the eShop if you have a Japanese 3DS. There's also an English patch for the original game if you want to fire that up. And original carts aren't too expensive either. Double Dragon 2 is easily available for $10 to $15, and Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun Bangai Ranto Hen is even cheaper than that, regularly below $10. And remember, original Game Boy hardware is region-free. And that does it for this weird trans-Pacific tale of how a River City Ransom follow-up almost became another Renegade, but then became Double Dragon 2. All Technos franchises all crossed up. In the next installment of the Game Boys of Summer, Roger the Retro Gaming Puppet will be providing you with 5 reasons to own a Game Boy. Look forward to that. We'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please do all the stuff people ask for. Ring the bell, like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. If you really dug this, consider supporting the shows on Patreon. Just $1 per month gets you early access to new videos, plus your name listed here among these lovely folks. If you want more Game Boys of Summer, the playlist is on the left, and if you want more Double Dragon, my video discussing the arcade and Genesis versions of Double Dragon 2 is on the right.